afternoon. It's Tuesday, the 13th of January. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News, broadcasting from Jerusalem. The 4 French Jewish victims of the Paris kosher market terror attack were laid to rest today in Jerusalem. President Reuven Rivlin, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and thousands of mourners attended the funerals of 21-year-old Yoav Hattab, 20-year-old Johan Cohen, 40-year-old Philippe Braham, and 64-year-old Francois Michel Saada. IBA's Aryeh O'Sullivan was at the funeral and joins us now in the studio. Aryeh.
Thank you, Laura. It was a somber mood at Givat Shaul where the funeral took place under the clear blue skies of Jerusalem. Thousands of people came to pay their last respects, many being shuttled in by special buses provided for the event. Most attendees were members of the French Jewish community living in Israel. The ones I spoke to said they were full of grief for the families of the 4 victims, but also they wanted to show solidarity against the attack on Jews. Some carried signs saying they died because they were Jews. Others wept quietly. The bodies arrived early this morning from Paris and were brought to Jerusalem, where they were laid out side by side and covered in the traditional talit. Family members, fathers, brothers, sons, each recited the Kaddish or mourner's prayer and ripped their shirts in a sign of mourning. The son of Francois Michel Saada eulogized his father.
He was in love of Israel. He really wanted to live here, and he will. He wanted to, all his life, he wanted to gather people, and he did. He's here now, and I'm sure he's really happy to be with you here.
Following prayers by the chief Sephardi rabbi, the nation's leaders spoke, and they all echoed the same message, that the 4 victims of the Paris attack on a kosher supermarket were not alone, but were part of a greater Jewish community. President Reuven Rivlin said, "This isn't the way we wanted to see you. We wanted you here alive." He said in his heartbreaking eulogy, it was inconceivable that Jews had to live in fear in Europe 70 years after the Holocaust, and they should come to Israel. But returning to the homeland shouldn't be done out of fear. We want you to come out of love. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who returned himself last night from Paris, said that Islamic terror was not just a threat to Jews, but to the whole world. He said that Western leaders are now starting to understand this. He added that deep in the heart of every Jew, they know that the state of Israel is there for them. And now, more than ever, Jews should come here, thus strengthening the Jewish nation. Opposition leader Isaac Herzog spoke against the never-ending hate against Jews and said the unity of the Jewish people would not let terror defeat us. The procession then quietly moved to the graveside where, in the end, it was only fitting that the 4 victims of the attack in Paris be buried in Jerusalem's earth. Laura?
Thank you, Aryeh. The only woman killed in the Charlie Hebdo terror attack in Paris was Sophie Bramley. Her cousin Elsa Kayat told CNN's Erin Burnett that she believes that Bramley was targeted because she was a Jew.
They spared all the women, and she was the only one killed, and she was the only one Jewish. And also, when I talked to her brother last night, he was telling me that she had been getting phone calls for a while, and anonymous phone calls, obviously, and I can't say that it was the same team of people, but the calls were saying basically, dirty Jew, you should stop working for Charlie Hebdo, otherwise we're going to kill you. So if you put 2 and 2 together, it seems like, yeah, she was definitely killed because she was Jewish. And that to me is makes it even worse because it, brings back ugly memories, and also obviously because the press hasn't really talked about it that way here. It was only about freedom of speech that was attacked, and my feeling was that religion was there too, and today unfortunately seemed to prove that I wasn't totally wrong.
She was the only woman killed. I mean, as you know, according to the New York Times, the female cartoonist who was downstairs. They forced her to open the doors to the building. They spared her. A freelance journalist who was there had a gun pointed to her head, and then they said, "No, we don't shoot women." But then exactly. One of the journalists that was in that meeting said the gunman ambushed and said they wouldn't kill women at all. But of course, your cousin was brutally murdered. I know you believe that it could have been because she was Jewish. Was she afraid? I mean, you talk about her getting these calls. Was she nervous or afraid at all to go to work, feeling that she was a target?
She was an incredible woman. She was a brilliant psychoanalyst, and she was doing this only by passion because she cared about the team that was doing Charlie Hebdo, because she cared about the ideas that they had, and she was over the top for everything. I mean, nothing was never enough, and she was a workaholic and as I said, an incredibly passionate woman. So I think she did it because she thought her own freedom and her passion went above the rest.
Now on to with the new developments with the Charlie Hebdo newspaper, which is due to print an unprecedented 3 million copies for distribution tomorrow. Alexandra Jen has the story. Alexandra?
Exactly 1 week after the attack at the Charlie Hebdo offices, the satirical newspaper will be issuing the next edition of its newspaper. As you can imagine, nothing about the preparation of the issue was routine. Here is the newest front page of Charlie Hebdo. Featured is a Prophet Muhammad holding an I am Charlie sign while shedding a single tear. Above him reads, "All is forgiven." An estimated 3 million copies of the issue will be printed depending on demand. That's 50 times the usual amount. The decision to depict the Prophet Muhammad, yet again, is bound to stir the wrath of Muslim fundamentalists. Cartoons depicting Muhammad in previous issues of Charlie Hebdo were the very reason for the terrorist attack. Charlie Hebdo's lawyer says, in addition to the cover, inner pages of the paper will contain cartoons of Muhammad, as well as other religious political figures. Via Twitter, Liberation newspaper released a photo of the cover a day before the newest edition comes out. Liberation newspaper is a far-left French daily paper. The staff of Charlie Hebdo is temporarily working at their offices. The surviving members of the satirical publication have been hard at work on the next issue, out tomorrow. The newly appointed editor-in-chief, Gerard Biard, who replaced the late Stéphane Charbonnier, assures the paper will be ready tonight, but a couple more days to prepare would have been good. In creating the headline-making front page, the Charlie staff paid special attention to the fine details in the news surrounding the attacks. Renaud Louzier, known as Luz, is the cartoonist behind the cover. Luz says everything advances little by little, micro details. The cartoon is all about the detail, the tiny details. Liberation newspaper reports that the editorial team's objective was to show that Charlie Hebdo was not dead. The 8-page publication will be available in kiosks Wednesday, as always. In defense of the decision to put a drawing of Mohammed on the front page, Charlie Hebdo's lawyer, Richard Malka, said, "We will not give the spirit of I am Charlie means the right to blaspheme." By the way, Laura, many are refusing to publish a picture of the front cover. They include CNN, NBC, BBC, and the New York Times. Those who are publishing the cartoon include CBS, The Guardian, The Wall Street Journal, AFP, The Washington Post, and of course, we here at IBA News. Laura.
Thank you, Alexandra. U.S. President Obama's administration has come under fire for failing to attend the mass rally in Paris. Prime Minister Netanyahu has come under criticism for attending. IBA's Margot Dudkevich reports.
U.S. President Barack Obama has assured Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that Washington is focused on reaching a comprehensive deal with Iran that will prevent it from acquiring a nuclear weapon. In a telephone conversation yesterday between the two leaders, the issue of the Palestinian Authority's application to become a member of the International Criminal Court was also discussed. Obama emphasized that he strongly opposes actions by any party that will undermine the trust, and suggested Israel and the Palestinians take steps to de-escalate the tensions. Netanyahu has constantly warned of the dangers any deal with the Islamic Republic that fails to adequately address the nuclear threat poses. Jerusalem has also sharply criticized the Palestinian statehood bid at the UN Security Council, which received the support of France and other European nations. However, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's attendance at the anti-terrorism march in Paris earlier this week has drawn fire, sparking a debate on whether he should have gone at all, or whether his presence turned into a humiliating media fiasco, supplying his political rivals with enough fodder for the upcoming election campaign. Netanyahu was captured elbowing his way to the front row at the rally, waving to the crowd in response to pro-Israeli shouts from passers-by. This as other world leaders maintained a somewhat somber composure. Netanyahu changed his mind at the last minute and decided to participate in the rally. This despite reported requests from French President François Hollande not to attend the march, to ensure the Israeli-Palestinian conflict would be kept out of Europe's show of unity. Yesterday, French television images of Netanyahu standing in line waiting to board a bus to attend the rally became the talk of the town in Paris. The footage shows the nervous Israeli leader surrounded by security guards, concerned and somewhat confused, constantly looking over his shoulder at the surrounding building rooftops. While the footage is somewhat disturbing, it also raises serious questions concerning Netanyahu's safety and well-being. The minutes he spent waiting in line, in retrospect, presented an ideal target for terrorists. There are those who believe that the elected leader of the State of Israel deserved better treatment from the local authorities. Media reports in Israel speculated the fact Netanyahu was made to wait for a bus raises questions of what France thinks of Israel. Obama administration officials also came under fire for failing to attend the rally. While some suggested the Secret Service security requirements would have had a negative impact on those participating in such a large public event, others question why President Barack Obama, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, or other key American government officials opted not to attend a rally whose message to combat terror and fight Islamic extremists is a key component of the country's foreign policy.
Some have asked whether or not the United States should have sent someone with a higher profile than the ambassador to France. And I think it's fair to say that we should have sent someone with a higher profile.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry countered the criticism directed at the administration, calling it a bit of quibbling.
The United States has been deeply engaged with France from the moment this horrific event took place. I think I must have been one of the first people in the world to have gone out publicly and spoken to the people of France about this. The president also went out within hours and spoke about it. And we have offered from the first moment our intel, our law enforcement, and all of our efforts. And I really think, this is sort of quibbling a little bit.
Olga Dudkevich, IBA News.
New York newspapers lambasted the Obama administration for failing to send a high-profile delegation to the rally in Paris that was attended by leaders from over 40 countries. A leader of the American Jewish community joined in with the critics and also questioned whether Turkish and Palestinian leaders should have been allowed to attend.
I think it is regrettable. It's become an issue. It deflects from the serious matters that really should be discussed. And the failure to have someone there of real stature, as 40 other countries did, I think is unfortunate and regrettable. For 50 years, Israel fought the battle against terrorism alone. Today, the whole world is engaged in it. And I think it's also regrettable that some of those who are responsible for the incitement, the ongoing incitement, like Abbas of the Palestinian Authority, like Davutoglu of Turkey, were allowed to march in a protest against the very things that they are helping to promote.
The remarks of Hohenlein followed comments by Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan, who slammed Netanyahu for attending the Paris rally. Erdogan spoke after receiving PA President Mahmoud Abbas, who traveled to Ankara from Paris, where he was received by Erdogan with an honor guard and several kisses. Referring to Netanyahu, Erdogan asked rhetorically, "How do you feel when a man who carried out state terrorism by killing 2,500 people waves at a crowd in Paris as if people were waiting for him with great excitement? He should first give account for the children he has killed." Erdogan also criticized the West, which he accused of racism and Islamophobia that he claimed lies beneath the Paris massacres. He explained that the attack on mosques are provocations and measures must be taken. BBC anchor Tim Wilcox has issued an apology for having caused offense after being criticized by Jewish groups for his line of questioning of a French Jewish woman in Paris on the sidelines of the Unity March. Here's the interview in question.
We have to we have to not to be afraid to say that the Jews are they are the target now. It's not only
many critics, though, of Israel's policy would suggest that the Palestinians suffer hugely at Jewish hands as well.
Right-wing French National Front leader Marine Le Pen spoke last night at the European Parliament building in Strasbourg. Ahead of her address, a number of lawmakers stood up demonstratively, holding Je suis Charlie signs, and a minute of silence was observed to honor the victims of the Paris attacks. Le Pen blamed Islamic fundamentalism for the attacks. She said that our first duty toward the victims is to put a name on what killed them. Terrorism is simply a means. They were killed by people acting in the name of a deadly ideology that causes so many victims. Le Pen went on to blame the EU's open border and economic policies for allowing such attacks to take place, and added, "We have open borders the EU cannot control, while the police, intelligence services, and armed forces are left unarmed." The European anti-Islamization movement, Pegida, is gaining support. A record 25,000 protesters took part in their weekly march in Dresden. Dressed in black and holding banners with anti-immigration slogans, the protest took place despite calls from some political leaders to cancel the march. German Chancellor Angela Merkel made it clear that she considers Pegida to be racist and intolerant. At the same time, she announced plans to attend a rally today at the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin to remember the victims of Islamist attacks in France. Germany has some of the world's most liberal asylum rules, partly due to its Nazi past. Back here at home and turning to election news, and the Labour Party held its party primary today for the Knesset list for the upcoming election. 36 candidates are in the running for slots on the list, but very few are realistic. Ellie Wogelander brings us this report.
Some 49,000 registered Labour Party members headed to the ballot boxes today to select the slate of candidates that will run jointly with Tzipi Livni's Hatanwa party in the upcoming Knesset election. Voting is by paper ballot, on which voters will be asked to check off between 8 and 10 candidates. 36 candidates are competing in the primary, but all eyes will be on Shali Yachimovich to see whether she will win the third slot on the list after her successor as Labour leader Isaac Herzog and running mate Livni. Yachimovich is also fighting an internal battle against two women in Labour, whose stock in the party is increasing. MK Stav Shafir and Mirav Michaeli. Shafir is considered one of the prominent MKs in the last Knesset over her activity in the Finance Committee and her vocal confrontations with Committee Chairman Nissan Slomiansky of Bayit Yehudi. After Herzog cast his vote in Modi'in today, he predicted that he will put together a government and we will change Israel's national priorities. MK Mickey Rosenthal said he too was confident that Labour would emerge victorious.
I'm absolutely convinced that the Labour Party and Yitzhak Herzog will lead the next government, absolutely. Because the people are fed up from Netanyahu, the people are suffering from economic problems and so on, and this will be the main issue on this election, and I'm absolutely convinced that Herzog will be the next prime minister.
Voting booths opened at 10 o'clock this morning and will close at 10 o'clock tonight. Labour is promising to conduct a short, fast computer count of the ballots, in contrast with the rather embarrassing situation in Likud, where the count has not officially ended due to a series of appeals that have been filed challenging the initial results. The counting of votes will take place through computers capable of scanning up to 200 forms per minute. Final results are expected to be announced tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. Ellie Wogelander, IBA News.
In local basketball action, Maccabi Tel Aviv cruised to their 9th straight league win as they crushed Ironi Nahariya 103-76 on the northern team's home court. Nahariya was within 4 points of Maccabi midway through the second quarter, but then went south, allowing Maccabi to go into the break 17 points up. 6 players scored in double digits, led by newly signed American forward Joe Alexander, who finished with 17 points and 8 rebounds. He spoke about the win with Israel Television sports reporter Hadass Greenberg.
To finally come out, get some minutes, and help the team, felt good. I didn't really have any expectations except to come in and work hard. So I couldn't really tell you what would have happened, but so far everything's going well, and the team's treating me really well.
The Israeli ski season is underway. The Mount Hermon ski resort has officially opened its gates to the public, and skiers and winter sports lovers are all welcome to head to the northern slopes to enjoy this rare wintry treat following a week of continuous snowfall. Admission tickets to the site have been reduced by 20% following an agreement with the Ministry of Tourism, and entry is now 39 shekels per adult and 34 per child. Workers at the site are hoping that the snow will last much longer than last year, when the white stuff was gone after only 8 days. Turning to local finance, and the shekel was mixed in foreign currency trading, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were up. Here's a look at the late afternoon numbers. Turning to the weather, and light local rain is predicted in the north and center of the country. Here are the highs and lows for the next 24 hours at home and abroad. And that's all for this newscast. Please join us again tomorrow at the same time for more news from Israel and abroad. Until then, I'm Laura Cornfield, wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.